if you want. And yeah, I'll get into it. So I wanted to talk about the Black Moon Lilith, which is it's a lunar point. So just going straight into it. And what that is it's actually a point that is where the moon reaches its maximum distance from the Earth. So it's actually more like it's a metaphysical thing. It's not a planet. It's not, yeah. And so the calculations are formed in an 8 and 10-year cycle around the zodiac, and there's 40 per year. And some say that we have our Black Moon Lilith return around 50 years old. So when we have our old wounds and things that come up, they can come up in more force around 50 years old. So I wanted to identify something else about the Black Moon Lilith that gets confused, is that there's 3 points in Lilith in astrology. There's 3 Lilith names. So there's the Black Moon Lilith, which is an abstract geometrical point in space. So that's what we're talking about today. And then there's the Dark Moon Lilith, which is actually some astrologer thought it was like a second moon that can be seen at some points in the universe, in the sky. I'm not too sure. You can look it up. But to me, I was like, I don't really know what that is. The second moon, I haven't researched it, but that's what that is. And then there's the asteroid Lilith, which is actually called number 1181. So it's not super mystical, but and it's in an asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. So that asteroid has its own thing going on, as well as the dark moon, but we're talking about the Black Moon Lilith. So there's a few mythological stories that comes with Lilith as well. And the one that we might know or that I resonated with was, I am Jewish, so I take the one from the Hebrew mythology. So what we sometimes don't get told was that Lilith was a dark goddess. She was, she's known to be as a really sexual, amazing goddess, and she was actually Adam's first wife. So like in Adam and Eve. And Adam wanted to dominate her in the bedroom, in sex, and just he wanted to control her and her every action. And she actually refused to be submissive to him. She didn't want to be his submissive wife. So she distanced herself from Adam, and she left the Garden of Eden on her own accord. So God supposedly sent 3 angels after her, but to come and take her back. And she refused, and then she was demonized, and then was known to be this fallen woman who gave birth to demon babies and stole them from their beds and then ate them. So I don't really know about that part. It's a bit darker, you know. It's interesting. I think like a lot of the mythology is really fascinating when I think like back in those days when they were telling these stories, they really wanted to know like, okay, what's the most fucked up thing that could happen? Is like, okay, just eating your own children. So if you know about Cronus, he actually Saturnine, he rules Saturn. He's depicted a lot in the mythology as eating his own children, and that imagery is so raw. Like it's just so intense. So I think it's more just like a vibe, really, is just like you're just kind of angry and bitter and you're rejected, and that's kind of how I interpreted it. It's just it kind of adds a little spice to the story. But so what does that mean? So her energy is actually, so she represents the conscious decision to go against, kind of to go against society, or to go against, you know, your own, the dignity. You just surrender your dignity and you just do what feels right for you. And so she's free will, and hers the, you know, but her on the other side is that her decision to create her own life path actually forced her to some kind of exile in a way, and it caused a lot of anger and pain and rejection. And so that makes the healing difficult. that's her energy. So healing whatever sign we have, whatever house she's in, whatever aspects we have, is kind of this shadow side of us, this darker, more rejected part of us, and the healing is going to be difficult in that. And I'll give some examples as well. So like the house and the sign where Lilith is found in your chart, it can denote where you stand with your confidence and you're determined, but then also there's an inability to let go gracefully, like without bitterness. So for example, you can think of someone with Lilith or Black Moon Lilith and Gemini in the 7th house. That could represent a need to trying to be heard in relationships, or either getting shamed for speaking up and for being ridiculed, or maybe being really bitter in relationships and fighting through the voice, through communication. And so ultimately we blend. You have to know the house systems and what each house represents, and then you blend the archetype. And so the archetype of the sign. And so I'll continue in that, but just to give a little thing. Does that make sense to everyone? Can I give like a thumbs up? Like everything's making sense? Okay, great. Yeah, so Lilith energy also gives us the ability to make decisions and to like follow through with them with confidence, even if it's like painful. Subconsciously, or if you've been wounded for it, it's still like the ability to do something, and that like this is the way. So Lilith can also challenge our connection with our passion with life, and if it's denied, then like their natural force of their darker aspects can be troublesome or destructive if it's not channeled properly. And so, but on a higher level, this energy can be embracing for your spiritual destiny, rather than having it, just tear you apart. Is when we go inward, we can use it towards spiritual growth. So it can also represent darker, deeper sides of us that are repressed or that are buried down. And so it's also like where it is in your chart, it can be a place where you feel ashamed, ridiculed, stifled, misunderstood, repressed in some manner. And then you're weary of expressing these traits or this part of your personality and feel that like uncomfortable doing that. So again, a lot of this can stem from childhood and feeling wounded in these states, because a lot of our biggest wounds stem from childhood. But once you investigate your Black Moon Lilith, I feel that some things can come to light there. There's also, in terms of cycles, like transits, when there's transits that line up with your Black Moon Lilith, there can be like purging cycles. So they can be like a binge, where it's just like all coming up at once, and you're just like, we're going all out, and it's really extreme and it's really intense. And, we have to understand how to read transits and see how they match up in our chart. But there is states of where it's more heightened than others. And then, eventually we'll deprive ourselves of those traits, and then they can come back again, perpetuating like a self-destructive cycle if not looked at properly, and if not channeled with love and integrity. So an example, something easy would be to explain Lilith and Aries. So Aries, if you don't know, is number 1, is the beginning, is birth, is newness. And Aries in this way rules the self. So if you have your Lilith in Aries or your Lilith in the 1st house, there could be discomfort or shame or issues around asserting yourself or showing up in the world, or you need to really make yourself heard and make yourself clear. So it can feel like wrong and unnatural, or you do it in a like awkward way. And then you feel ashamed because you were just trying to be yourself. And then you're just like, I'm never going to do that again. That was terrible. And then you kind of can go through this cycle of repetition until you've worked that self-assertion is okay. And it's actually what you need to do to grow. And so when we accept these traits in ourselves and we express them in ways that we've transformed to fit our unique personalities, then we can live without fear and guilt. And when we have really high expectations of ourselves in all life forms, in all areas, then we can convince ourselves that we don't care, or that we're never going to grow, we're never going to change, and this is just who I am, and all the self-sabotaging beliefs. Then it's easy to have fear and shame like mixed in, but we have to come to that from a place of empowerment. And, you know, just a side note, and something that I wanted to say is that I watched this really interesting motivational video and said a really nice quote that I really liked, that made sense to me, that our brains are actually wired to keep us safe. So if you think about this, our brains are in a state of survival, and they're in a state of survival. So that means like survival in social isolation, survival with health and death, and survival with love, family, everything. And so we have about a 5-second window in order to make those risky decisions that actually end up changing our lives for the better. So what I mean by that is we have like a second of like, oh, should I do that thing that makes me feel really uncomfortable, and should I do it? And we have about 5 seconds to make that switch. Otherwise the brain, it'll just be like, nope, I want to be safe here. This is safe. This is I know this place, and I'm not gonna lose. I'm not gonna be cast out by society. I'm not gonna die. So I'll just stay here in this place. And so what I encourage my clients to do is to actually step straight towards into this space that feels really scary and really unknown, and everything that you've been taught actually needs to be rewound and reprogrammed. So that is why I like using shadow work in astrology, or looking at the darker parts of yourself, to people who are open to it, and really harnessing the most growth from that. Because a lot of astrology, sometimes people say, oh, I already know that about myself. Oh yes, I already know that. And it's like, okay, well, would you like to talk about your Chiron, or your Black Moon Lilith, or your north and south nodes, right? Because that's something that's very, very deep and very personal, and people can be very surprised by how you can understand deep wounds that are, you don't even know them. So, and then not just telling people, oh, this is what you have brought in, this is your wounds, this is what you're destined for, but how do I work with this energy? You know, how do I grow with it? How do I harness it in my life? How do I reprogram and rewrite my story? So yeah, I was wondering if anybody had their experiences with knowing about their Black Moon Lilith, and if anything came up for them at all. Do people know what that is, or how to find it anyways? You can put yourself off mute and speak if that feels good for you.
I'm obsessed with it.
Yes, you're obsessed with it.
Yes, because my sun is conjunct my Black Moon Lilith in Taurus in the 8th house.
Wow.
And my daughter has her moon conjunct Black Moon Lilith. And she's also got the north node there, exact, all of them at 10 degrees.
Wow.
Both of us have it exact. And so I think about it a lot.
Wow, that's beautiful. And how does that show up for you in your life? And what did you feel when you found out about it?
Well, it's taken me a long time to try and figure it out, but I think it has to do with, it's really been coming to a head the last few years, because I just went through my second Saturn return, and it's really big. And so my daughter and I are really going through a lot right now. And I think it's playing out completely right now with the moon, with the emotions, and the sun. And, yeah, I'm still in the middle of it, so it's hard to explain.
For sure. It's a very emotionally driven Black Moon Lilith. If it's with the moon, that means that our emotions and our heart and even our childhood is attached to it. So it's very powerful, but that also means, especially being in the 8th house, there's a lot of opportunity for deep mystical work in that, and psychic connection, and lots of power. That's a very powerful placement.
Yeah, and it's in the 8th house for her as well.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
In Taurus for both of us, and so it's just playing out completely.
Mm. I have my Black Moon Lilith. It's interesting because you're saying it's the moon and the eighth house. I have my Black Moon Lilith in the eighth house in Cancer.
Oh, similar.
Yeah, so it's very strong. However, I've never delved into the Lilith work. I've delved really deeply into the Chiron work, and that later we can discuss because it was like really revealing. But the Lilith, I'm really curious about how to work with, like, how to work with that energy, or find what it's bringing. It's
Yeah. So like what I would interpret for Lilith in Cancer can be maybe like shame or feelings of needy around like just feelings of shame around being needy, and shame around needing to be dependent on someone else, and shame around receiving nurturing could be do you resonate with that?
bingo. Oof. Wow. I'll
And
have to process that. Yeah.
yeah, that's why I'm like, okay, like is this consensual? Because yeah, Lilith, it's all this stuff is wounded work. It's stuff that we carry that we might not even be aware of. We don't even really know. When I found out about mine, I was like, okay, this is really interesting. But we also have to have good sources as well, and I can tell you which books to read.
Totally.
So also with the Lilith in Cancer, like if you grew up like nurturing others and trying to take care of others and it was rejected in some way, then you could also like take that rejection within yourself, and would think that that nurturing love you're not meant to have, because you can't really give it to others, or you try to give it to others and it's not really being received exactly, or it can be uncomfortable to like ask for help or expressing your own nurturing needs. And so because of this, it can lead to like extremes of behavior, and could be like acting out, or, you know, just like drama and not really knowing why there's drama. But it's actually, yeah, the key to this one, it would be just really working on self-acceptance, and allowing to ask for help and helping and nurturing and really taking on the Cancerian mother role would be how to how to nurture this.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. Yeah, always fun stuff with the shadow work. Yeah, so I did just want to keep this pretty cash, but so if you guys aren't familiar with the archetypes, like the 12 zodiac signs, just getting really grounded in those and just studying and studying and forever studying those. I can always study the 12 zodiac signs, and I'm always amazed by new things, and just really studying people that you hang around to and asking their sun, moon, and rising. And then ultimately astrology starts to make sense more when you learn about the planets, and when you learn about stuff like Lilith. You blend the archetypes, and then you blend it with the house it's in. So it's a bit of a journey, but a very, very long but rewarding journey. And so yeah, I would say like the first thing to understanding your chart, or understanding, because you know, first you want to understand your chart, and then you want to understand the darker aspects, because we don't have to go straight to the intense stuff right away. It's good to know your gifts as well. And yeah, so again, just emphasizing that, like really honing in on the 12 zodiac signs and looking at all the different approaches as well. Like looking at it, you can look at it from an ancient astrology point. I took me and Dolce actually studied with the same teacher. We studied with Adam Ellenbass, and so he's ancient astrology, but recently I've been really into evolutionary astrology and esoteric astrology, because I find it just so much more mystical. And yeah, so just like finding out what you like, and then really understanding the zodiac, and then really understanding the houses. And I recommend understanding the houses from all these different perspectives. So from ancient astrology, evolutionary astrology, even modern astrology to some extent, because they're all so diverse and they can all teach so much. And then from there, understanding planets and asteroids and things, you just kind of blend things and intuitively and look it up, and then you'll find out your things. So are we feeling good on Lilith? Can I move on, or do we want to keep talking about Lilith? We're good? We're good? Thumbs up? Okay. There's a lot of amazing, like really awesome goddesses in astrology that I'm excited to dive more into. I'm feeling a little bit hesitant to really understand them fully because I feel like I just understood the planets like not that long ago, the main planets. So I really like want to learn about like Sirius and Pallas and more Lilith stuff and all the goddess archetypes and planets. But once I learn about those deeply, I'll do another talk on them and how they affect our lives. So I am pleased and excited to talk about something that is very deep in my chart and very deep in the people that I've read for around me, and that's Chiron. So do people know what Chiron is or any stories about him? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, so we're like 50-50. Kind of know Chiron, kind of don't. So Chiron is an asteroid. Okay, so let's think about that, right? Sometimes we forget that astrology is like actually in the sky. So it's an asteroid. That's pretty cool. And he was discovered in 1977 on November 1st, which is Sagittarius season, by a man named Charles Nowell. And so Chiron actually passes the orbits of Saturn and Uranus. And so what does that? That means that he's like the bridge between radical change, a revolution, which is Uranus stuff, and then awakening, liberation of old structures, what is traditional, maintains form and its structure, and it's long lasting. So he's kind of that bridge between radical change, revolution, and old ideas. So he's a balance in the cosmos, and he can also teach us like what needs to stay the same and what needs to change, which is that Saturn Uranus blend, shall we say. So Chiron is considered the chief senator, and he's actually quite small. He's supposed to be depicted as a very small little guy who's really muscular. So it's kind of like a Sagittarius archetype. So by his size, he's also supposed to represent small or hidden things about our own nature that may seem maybe like kind of insignificant or we can put on the back burner, but they're actually quite important, and they can cause wounding, a wounding journey, but it's also a healing journey. And so also the things that I'll get into more deeply, but the things that we are the most wounded in is generally what we end up teaching to other people. And it's generally what we end up being as a career in our career in is the wounds and the things that we've learned in our lifetime is how we usually end up living or like teaching others. And so when I found that out, I was like, wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, I teach people how to like come into their power and to be mystical and to tap into their intuition and their psychic abilities because that's what I didn't have or what I got repressed as growing up. So, you know, that's what I do now for a living because I've fought through that and tried to make it happen. So there's that. But yeah. So yeah, we do have a Chiron return as well as our Lilith return, which is, it takes him about 50 years to go through the cycle of the zodiac. So we have, again, it's kind of the same thing. We have our healing return, shall we call it, around 50 years old. So Chiron is known as the wounded healer. That is one of the most stereotypical names for him. And he's a major asteroid. So he's actually classified as both a comet, and now he's increasingly becoming more as a planetoid or like a minor planet. He's kind of getting more leverage. And so where we have Chiron in our charts shows not only where we've been wounded, but our potential for wounding and where we've learned to overcome these wounds, and where they've become a major source of strength and wisdom with us. So Chiron is a healer. Like his archetype is the healer, and he's the teacher of all things having to do with healing. So I know that's a lot, but I hope you're still with me. So we'll get to the story of Chiron. Is that he's the son of Cronus, the god that I was telling you that likes to eat his children. Saturn likes to eat his children because they taste really good. And so he was the father to Cronus and a sea nymph named Phileria. I don't know how to say it. But they were actually in their horse form when Chiron became alive. When he was conceived, he was a centaur. He came as a centaur embodiment. And so when Chiron was born, they actually thought he was really ugly. His parents cast him out as being this really ugly, half horse, half human thing. So he was abandoned by his parents. And so this is supposed to represent his first wound and the rejection of within, just general rejection. And so he was actually rescued by the sun god Apollo, and Apollo's the god of healing and music and prophecy. And so he helped Chiron's healing journey. That's the beginning of his journey. And so there's lots of things to learn from Chiron. So there's one thing is exile. That's one of the main energies of Chiron, is that he has this energy of exile that comes with him in the sphere of rejection. And Chiron can represent areas of our life where we feel excluded. And so we need to find a form of like being an individual, or just like human tendencies of feeling rejection. That's just like an innate fear. And so like, what parts of ourselves do we feel ugly, or do we feel that we like don't accept fully? That's kind of Chiron's journey. So the second wound with this dear centaur happened later in life. And it's a story of Hercules actually shooting him in the leg with a poisonous arrow. And so the arrow was dipped in a blood that could not be cured. It's like this forever wound. That's the archetype. He's just always in pain. He can't get this arrow out of his leg. It's this bloody wound. And if you look up what Chiron looks like, you'll see this really dramatic pictures of he has this bloody arrow in him. And so this incurable wound spurred him to try on all the realms of healing. Like what could he do? Because he was a god, he's immortal. So in the process of healing, he became a powerful teacher and a powerful healer, and people came from all over the world to learn from him. And so something that I really want to emphasize about Chiron is that with this, where Chiron is in our charts, it's that it's often represents something we can do for others, but something we can't do for ourselves. So it's really important to know that is that we can harness this energy outwards so we can help other people in this realm, but then integrating it for ourselves is difficult. So we can transcend this, of course, we can transcend our wounds, but we need to integrate our wholeness and our story and know what that is and how to move forward. So our wounds become not only the source of our healing journey, but there's also an element of our service to support others in their healing journey. And so we become masters of, like I said earlier, of what we try to heal within ourselves, is we become the masters of bringing that out to the world around us. So depending on our placement and our aspects, we have bigger wounds than some people, or greater wounds, and some people are physical and you can see it. Some people are more energetic, some are in the past, and this all, can arguably be found in our chart. And for some, it's a quiet and hardly noticeable experience having Chiron there. Maybe they just go their whole lives and they don't even know that they're wounded in this aspect. And then for others, usually healers, like usually people that do healing work, they find that this is a really strong archetype, or they find that they feel really resonant with Chiron. because that's just how healers go. And yeah, there's an element of like mastering this healing journey as the strong placement of Chiron in the chart. You know, that's like what healers want to do, is they kind of want to master the Chiron. A lot of people are drawn to Chiron for this reason. So yeah, I wanted to give an example of Chiron, and I can talk about my own experience too, because I love bringing up my own vulnerabilities. And yeah, so you know, maybe you could be a writer, a prolific writer. You're just an amazing writer, which would Chiron would be maybe in your third house, which is ruled by Gemini again. So you're an amazing writer, and you know, but yet Chiron's in your third house, so that could like highlight your wounds and fears of self-expression and being heard and being seen and being validated. And so you know, healing this aspect of the fear of being heard or having your voice communicated is actually, then you can become an amazing storyteller and a communicator, and then you can feel like the strength and the discipline through all that work that you've done. So yeah, that's one example. Another example, I already used Aries. Well, let's use mine. So I have Chiron in the 11th house in Virgo. And so the 11th house rules community, friends and allies, and innovations, and just moving forward the future, and an idea of the future and how I'm going to get there. It's in Virgo, so Virgo tends to known to be perfectionist, or can be critical, self-critical in the self in its wounded state. And so when you look at this archetype, you're like, what does that mean? Okay, so if I have wounds in the sense of community and friends and allies, is I grew up getting really heavily bullied by basically everyone. I was just like an outcast. I was just not, I was just like not accepted. And I was talking about this with my partner, and I was like, I don't really think I did anything. Like I was just kind of just my weird little brown girl, and like I just wasn't really doing anything. I was just still outcast. And you know, later in my life, I had friends that I thought were friends, like friend allies, right? I thought they were allies, but then they would just randomly abandon me, or they would just choose someone else, or whatever. It's really endless for me to have this wound and feeling like I need to feel supportive, or I need to feel like I have the sense of fullness with my allies. And so without purposefully going towards this, I, you know, grew up, I got older, and I found community. I found hippies and I found a sense of connection, and I found I was accepted for being different and weird, you know, that Aquarius energy was actually accepted and it was invited. And so that was the first time that I experienced that. And so I realized, like, when I do work for people, when I work with people, one of the first things I ask them is like, do you have community? You know, that's so important. You know, you have to feel that you're supported, and you have to feel that you have allies. And, you know, so I realized that that was like, because that was my wounded journey, but it's not something that we have to really, like, it's easy to identify with our wounds. Like, we can be like, that's my story, right? I'm bullied, I was the victim, I was all this. And so I choose to not live by that. I definitely can remember those days of everything that I went through, but it's also like there's a big space for healing that. And also it just, in the work that I do, is I provide a space that people feel okay to be weird and different, or they're, you know, that's kind of where that goes, but kind of rambling now. But I just wanted to open up the space if other people know about their Chirons and how they felt when they found out about it, or like what came up for them. Or if you're like, Luna, I have no idea how to find my Chiron, like help me, then we can talk about that too. But just you can just take yourself off mute and speak freely.
Yeah, everything that you just kind of shared actually like really cleared up a lot for me around my Chiron. I also have Chiron in Virgo. And like every time I've read anything about it, it's like this person is like physically sick their whole life. Like that's what I read on the internet. So I've been very confused about that. So you just cleared up a lot. But I have it in the 3rd house. So I'm really curious, like if you could speak to that, like what that would mean for you.
Well, the 3rd house is kind of self-expression through the voice. I would do you sing at all?
Yeah.
You do sing, right? Yeah, I remember you being really good at singing, but then being really insecure about it.
Yes, that's exactly.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, but
no, I'm great. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be mostly about just like speaking up, or just like having a voice or feeling that you're able to be heard. Again, with that Virgo, the Virgo wound can really talk you down. So it can be like, you're shitty. Don't even open your mouth. Just keep quiet. That's the best way to deal with this. So, and that's like Virgo energy. While as like, if you say had something like Leo in the 3rd house, that would rule the 3rd house in Chiron, it would be like, maybe your wounds are you're too crazy, and you're just like, you're too expressive. And so people have been like, you need to calm down. But rather with Virgo, I would interpret that as a more internal thing. And it's a more, well, Virgo, with what it said about health as well, is that Virgo rules health. So, but when I interpret, if you have to look deeper, right? So it rules health, but it's in the 3rd house. So that's like your throat health. That's your throat chakra, right? That's how you show up in the world with your who you are. Maybe you're embarrassed about just speaking, and just what you say you think sounds dumb. And so like that's going to be your wound and your healing journey. But our wounds it's funny because a lot of times people like we're really attached to it, but if you ask someone else, like they'd be like, what, Luna? She's amazing. I love having her in community. She's so fun, and they had no idea that I was like the biggest outcast of society, and it's the same with like, oh, Michaela, oh, I love her voice, and oh, I love when she's around, and she's so funny with her jokes, and I wish she would hang around more, but then it's like they don't know that you've been struggling to, open up or whatever. So
yeah.
That's what I would interpret that as.
Freaking spot on. Yeah, I've struggled with all of that my whole life. And
well, I send your little throat some love.
Thank you.
And just know that these are our karmic wounds. These are like what we're brought into this lifetime to evolve, right? This is how the soul evolves, is when we recognize what we need to work on, and then we completely transcend it. So, I mean, it's easier said than done. It can take a lifetime. It could take multiple lifetimes, but there's different modalities of how we do that. So,
yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Anyone else?
Well, I do have a deep Chiron experience. Of course, I'm gonna make it short and sweet, but if I can. But I'd like to ask maybe you, Luna, what your interpretation is, and then I can say what I've been working on, and then maybe see how that ties in. So my Chiron is a 6th house Taurus Chiron, but it's in opposition to Venus, which is the 12th house in Scorpio, and conjunct Uranus. So Venus conjunct Uranus, and they're both opposing Chiron in the 6th house in Taurus. So this, I mean, I kind of have done a lot of work around that, and when it clicked, there was a massive amounts of psychic information came in. But what would you feel or interpret, so we can
I mean, there's a lot there, because it's very contradictory. Like when it opposes more Venusian things, like, well, I mean, I'd have to see it. I'm a very visual person, so I do like seeing the chart. But what do you feel are your oh there it is.
There it is.
What do you feel are your Venusian wounds?
Well, perfect. That's exactly it. Is absolutely the wounded feminine, and I had memories even from a long time ago, like not memories but feelings of being a prisoner or being a prostitute, or be, and these are
Oh,
like,
that's north and south node stuff too.
yeah, but I have, because I have Venus in the 12th house too, so it's, and it's in Scorpio, so
Oh.
deep. And I have had dreams for a long time of being abused, but it was all in the dreamscape. My current life seems very nice, but it was all always, since I was a child, I had like ideas of really horrific, like almost like rape like things, and or yeah, very gory sexual things, even from a young age, which were not in my current life. They were somewhere in my psyche, uh, and I felt I could have been like a prisoner, or like a slave of some sort, or caught in a cycle of slavery. And this was very interesting because karmic cycles, they're not just you're only on one role, you're always on both ends of the wheel. And when I discovered about Chiron's sixth house, because I was wondering, Chiron's sixth house, like that's the house of Virgo, like what's with that? And then boom, of course, there's of course the aspect of perfection, and also the aspect of you have to do the work, and you have to always, like the Chiron wound in the sixth house is almost like, if you're not worthy, Taurus, you're not good enough. If you're lazy, you're not good enough. If you're not producing, you're not good enough. And I'm like, wow, when I found that out, I always found that if I was very afraid of being seen as lazy if I'm not always working. Work.
That's also, you're Virgo, right?
I'm a Virgo, yeah.
Crazy Virgos, I recognize them from far away. But they
yeah.
but that's also a Virgo thing, because like Venusian, so I wanted to touch on what you said about the 12th house. Having planets in the 12th house is very, like, people say it's very karmic, right? And that's like very stereotypical of what you described. Like, I had a friend that I did a reading on, and I asked him if he had, like, what his experience was with past life energy, because he had some things in the 12th house ruled by Pisces. And so I'm like, it's very typical in ancient astrology to have dreams, because the 12th house rules mental asylums and prisons and containments of like prisons. Like, it's just not a good place. And so if you have like Venus aspects and Venus things and Scorpio in there, like, that makes sense. It seems like you know what you're dealing with. So another thing about the sixth house having it in Chiron is also that the sixth house rules daily routines. It rules daily actions. So intuitively, I feel that one of the ways to heal this is the feminine Venusian wounds would be to make a daily practice, and a daily feminine self-love practice, that will keep you in touch with this feminine Venusian qualities. And then did she leave? Oh no, there you are. Oh, okay. And then you moved spots. And then really just being in touch with whatever makes you feel feminine, whatever heals these wounds, because past life regression and past life things I haven't been feeling super connected to personally, because whenever they come up, like I like went to this metaphysical school for a month, and I was meditating like for like 3 hours a day, and then I had this weird download of a past life, and I was like, okay, I'm not imagining this, I'm receiving it, like this is fully a thing. And I was basically, what I saw was I was begging in streets, like I was like poor and I was hungry, and I was with this like mother who was just trying to help us survive, and it seemed like a long ass time ago. And I was like, okay, interesting, but what do I do with this now? You know? So that's the thing about past life stuff, is I find that sometimes we can get obsessed with it when then we're not like living in the present. So when we find out what our wounds can be from the past, then we work immediately to heal it, immediately move on, because that's what the soul is aching for. You know, that soul is like, well, hey, like, remember that really crazy thing? Like, can we heal that? Can we work through that? So I would suggest, if you're open to it, invite that, just having a ceremony around that, really healing that, whatever that looks like for you, and then continuing with the daily practice, because Chiron in the 6th house is very much about, again, health on all forms, but also having that health, that daily health thing, and yours is ruled by Venus. So it makes sense to have like Venusian healing modalities, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And I know
Yeah.
you're very like erotic, dancing, like fun human, so it should be no problem for you.
I think that's part of the healing is precisely being that feminine, that divine feminine, and honoring it, because the wound is precisely directly to the feminine, my own wound, and also maybe the collective wound I represent through that, right? Is this divine feminine that's been wounded for thousands of years, abused. And that's how I always felt, abused. But and it's interesting because my hardest topics in life is always with the masculine, with whoever the masculine is. and and the wound always comes there as really strong, and the sensation of entrapment, and also the need for proving that I'm good, proving that I'm perfect, proving that I'm worthy. And that's like, oh my gosh, that's exactly there, the worth, the towards the Venusian energy of like the self-worth. It's like, wow. And I always wonder why, if I'm so intelligent, if I'm so pretty, if I'm so sensual, why does nobody love me? And that comes back to, I'll heal it when I can actually see myself, embrace myself, and love myself so fully, and release those horrible maybe memories from the past of being worthless. Because what is a slave? A slave is a worthless person. And what happens when you stop working? You get punished, you know?
Yeah,
So,
in Hellenistic astrology, slavery is the theme of the 6th house. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, ancient astrology is a bit darker. That's
Yeah.
why I kind of like a bit of
But
both.
let's say in evolutionary terms, which I like, I'm more into, I mean, I do a lot of the evolutionary astrology. I do feel, okay, this is part of this whole movement of healing the feminine, of bringing and restoring, now Cancer North Node,
Yep.
bringing that balance, bringing the feminine back into the experience of humanity. It's healing the divine feminine. And I'm like, okay. And I had lots of contact with the Hathor, with like, and actually this is also, I have so many visions and things, that's for another day topic or whatever. But I've had a lot of contact with the Isis energy. I just have that just sticks to me. Mary Magdalene, Isis, Hathor. I'm like, wow, where does all this come from? Even from dreams and things. And then I'm like, oh, maybe this is the expression that I'm supposed to heal, to also bring this to the world, to women, or to the divine feminine in general, even in men. And I'm like understanding that that's probably my strongest. That's why when you see me dancing, like, why is she like that? Like, I don't know. I came with that as well, maybe to share it and make others feel that they're worthy and beautiful, and just reestablish the divine feminine within. So yeah, that's my Chiron story. Thank you for your patience listening to my story. Thank you.
And yeah, that also emphasizes, I just wanted to emphasize the last thing that you said about bringing yourself into that, healing to the world, because ultimately that's how the soul evolves, is when we recognize our wounds, we work with it. It's not that they ever leave 100%, it's that we navigate it, and we kind of make it into art or expression, and then we heal the world through that. At least that's what I've been trying to do with all that. Yeah, does anyone else have anything else to say about Chiron? Hey, Chance, how about you? I won't put you on the spot.
I'm curious about Sagittarius. My son is Sagittarian, so I'm just kind of curious about that.
Wait, his sun sign is Sagittarius, or he's got
Yeah.
well, I mean, Sag has its wounds, as do all signs do, but we'd have to look at his chart, because we'd have to see like the depths of that, and have to see where his sun is aspecting and all that, but we can talk about that another day.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Just related to the what Michaela was talking about the third house. So I too have Chiron in the third house in Gemini, and I've just always felt like I have difficulty putting words to thoughts, and it was always a sensitivity of mine. And I have a chronic sore throat.
Oh, interesting.
Randomly, it's all good. It's been checked out, but it's just there. And I'm going. You talked about how your job can be related, and I'm in school for counseling, so literal talk therapy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I love it. Chance?
Yeah, well, I kind of looked at it this morning, so it's pretty fresh. I still have to go into it quite a bit more, but it's in the 10th house. Was it Cancer in the 10th house?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of Capricorn in me, so it's kind of the wounds around work. So it's been, yeah, it's just again more work. I got to add on to my career, all the wounds there, and I don't have much to say about it because it's pretty fresh. But
it's also about being seen. It's just generally because the 10th house rules fame, so it's and reputation. So when there's a Chiron in the house of fame and reputation, there's a fear to be seen, and so what I was researching is that people who have Chiron in this placement, who are afraid to be seen and afraid to show up in the world, would do really well to be life coaches. It would be really well to be like healers or movement people speaking about stuff like that, because it makes you the most in the spotlight. So it's because when we think about where Chiron is, like physically in the sky when we were born, it's technically at the highest point, right, in the sky near the midheaven. So it's interesting stuff. Thanks for letting me put you on the spot. It's my boyfriend, so it's fine. Okay, I will move on to the north and south nodes. And before I talk about the north and south nodes, there is a lot of different ways to interpret this. When I was looking at the north and south node in ancient astrology, again, it's like really intense. It's really like, here you were in your past life, and like if you have anything in the 12th house, you were like mentally ill and just like in insane asylums, and like, yeah, and then and then your sorry, that's the south node, and then the north node is like what you gotta do in order to survive, and like what you gotta do to get the soul evolution. And so I like to take a bit of both, as usual, some of the ancient and then some of the more like soul uplifting stuff. Like Black Moon Lilith, the north and south nodes are astrological points in space, and it's kind of hard to visualize. So you can look up like a diagram of what's actually happening, but it's a bit complex to just explain without, I don't have a chart or anything, but they're lunar nodes, and they're also known as the nodes of fate. And so they can usher us towards our most fulfilling spiritual path. So they also tell us like what skins we need to shed to get there, what like things we need to let go of. And so this includes lessons from our past life. So the north and south nodes are supposed to be about our past life and what we're heading towards. And so this includes like everything that we've learned from our past lives, all the gifts and everything we've already mastered. And so that it also includes like what's easy for us. So what our south node is, yeah, like what we could fall back on that's kind of easy, I guess you could say. So the north node, the south node represents like what we're coming from and bringing into this life. And so the north node represents the path you're growing into in this life, if that makes sense. So it's actually your destiny. The North Node is like, we arguably are going there anyways. It's just good to be aware of where that is and where we're heading towards. So it's also not easy. It's not an easy thing to head towards, you know, like it's not easy to have this element of change or of growth. Growth is hard in all ways. So that's something to keep in mind, that it's so spiritually fulfilling when we're going towards. So in order to become the person we want to be, we have to overcome our past. That's just how it is. And in our past lives, or even just in our general past as well, we have to overcome what we've been taught or what we've experienced. So the past is represented by the South Node, and it looks like a horseshoe. That's what it looks like. Chiron kind of looks like that. It's like an O. No, it's like this. It's like an O. There it is. It's an O with a K. That's Chiron. And then, sorry, Black Moon Lilith is like a moon with a cross. That was inventive. And so, so the North Node is like a little horseshoe, and then the South Node is a downwards horseshoe. So just explaining that. So the past is represented by the South Node, and so it kind of brings karmic baggage and lessons from your karmic past. I really like looking at the Astro Codex online. Astro Codex has amazing North and South Node interpretations. It's just like super intense and fun, and I really love how they describe everything. So the South Node is our karmic baggage and lessons that we've learned from our karmic past. And then the North Node represents the lesson you must learn in this lifetime, even if they fall outside your comfort zone. So I'll give some examples, but so what it is, it's where it is in space, is it's where the lines of the moon's monthly paths meet the lines of the sun's yearly path around the zodiac. So if you're not like super amazing with words like me and you need a visual, look it up and just look up like what that looks like, because it is good to conceptualize where it is in space. So given that these points are theoretical and they don't exist like physically, like they're a point that humans we made up. And so then that also is why the concepts are more spiritual in nature, because they have this ethereal quality to them. And at first, like, I didn't really know how much importance they had, and then the more I researched, I was like, wow, this is really potent medicine, and this is really really the good stuff in the birth charts for me. So again, the North Node is our karmic destiny in this lifetime and what we're moving towards. So if there's like unfinished business from our past lives and we want to evolve to our highest, best selves, then we have to embrace the North Node qualities, even if they feel really uncomfortable. So when you're looking at your chart, you can look at the North Node by its sign and by its house, and see like what energies you may neglect or avoid if it's due to fear and resistance. Maybe if you're reading about the past, like maybe you'll get flashbacks of memories or past life things, or whatever. For me, my South Node was very like this life, but you know, arguably it's from the past life, right? We don't really know. So think of the South Node more like your inheritance. It's like your inheritance of past lives. It's like the gifts that you brought in, but also kind of like what you were bound to. And so it's going to be easy to fall back on that. And in order to grow and to reach your potential, you have to expand and go through this. So the South Node also acts as a reminder of our past and like what we've overcome in former lives. So it's an axis, the South and North Node, and it's always opposite. So if you see in your chart that like, oh, there's the North Node, but like, where's the South Node? It's directly the opposite of what's in your chart. And so for me, I have my South Node's in Taurus in the 6th house. And so for me, that represented coming from stability and coming from a place of like, oh, you need to make money, you need to be financially stable, you need to be super this, you need to be super, you know, luxury, because Taurus rules finances and luxuriating and stability. And, you know, sixth house is all about daily actions and really showing up for that routine. And so I grew up with my family basically shoving that down my throat, was that I had to show up in this way of routine and discipline and making money, and that's how you're going to be safe and secure. And that's an easy thing for me to fall back on. Like I can easily just do that. You know, I could easily just go to university and do the things that my parents want me to do, and you know, I could live that way. Or I could look to my north node and I could see what my soul's evolution wants to do in order to grow, and that's in the 12th house. So the 12th house is, you know, the sign of mysticism. I can't make that up. And it's the sign of healing. It's the sign of healing others and developing your psychic abilities, but also not becoming mentally ill. And, you know, there's that interplay of archetypes. When there's one extreme, then there's the opposite. So I found that really fascinating, because I worked really hard against past life things, or what I came into this life with was like, you have to do this, you have to be this. And I was like, well, I want to do this, and this is what my soul is really feeling. And so I only recently started offering my gifts to the world and started opening up in this way, because I do feel it's my soul destiny. And honestly, like, I was on this path anyways, and when I was really looking into astrology and I found out about my north and south nodes, I was like, oh, this makes sense. Like, I couldn't really think of my soul's destiny like being explained in another way, because I've fought so hard to do this. And while again, it's easy to fall back onto like the south things, which is, that's how I interpreted that. But just wondering if you guys know about your south and north nodes, or if you have any questions on that. I'm not like a super big expert on the south and north, because there's just really deep ancient stuff in there that I haven't really tapped into. A lot of stuff about past lives, but I'm just curious what your experience is with the north and south nodes, if you have any in your chart.
I have a question. So I have looked into my north and south node, but I'm not overly familiar with Lilith and Chiron, so I was really excited for this talk. And in my chart, I have my south node is also in Taurus, but it's in the 12th house. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know if this would be considered a conjunction, but I have Lilith also in the 12th house in Taurus, but it's about like a 11-degree gap. So I'm just wondering, like, a potential conjunction between Lilith and the south node, like if you know how you would interpret that. Or
I think conjunctions are like, what, 3 degrees apart, 4 so they're hanging around each other. But it's not like a conjunction is more like they're inseparable. They come together. Like for me, I have my moon and Mars as a conjunction, and it's like those are together. They're just like a thing that's they're one. So I wouldn't interpret that as a conjunction. But what was the other question? So Lilith in Taurus?
Yeah, like Lilith and the south node are both in the 12th house in Taurus. So I was just wondering if there's like any connection between those two placements, or
yeah, I always like look at like how many planets are hanging out in that house, and what's the house, what is said about the 12th house, right? The 12th house is considered one of the most difficult or challenging or intense houses. And so there's definitely a lot to explore there. But like there could be similar to Tatiana, like Venusian wounds in the 12th house, like feminine stuff coming up, or like ideals around beauty There could be feminine wounds or material possession wounds, finance wounds, but then it's also mixed with spirituality and the mystical side of the very material world. So does that resonate at all, that they would be kind of together?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a complicated read. But yeah, no, definitely. And I also wanted to mention, I don't know if anyone is familiar with this book, but there's a book called Astrology for the Soul by Jan Spiller, and it's specifically about North and South nodes, and I've found it really awesome. So yeah, I just wanted to share that as well.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I hope I was somewhat clear.
Oh, no, you were clear. Thanks.
Anyone else?
I could share and ask questions.
Yeah, go for it.
I also have the same South in Taurus, right? And North in Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same. And hold on, I'm just looking. So my North node is in the 4th house, and I'm curious about that because I don't understand the 4th house a whole lot.
Yeah, 4th house is like, I also don't really understand very much, to be honest. I feel like I don't know about that one. So North node is in 4th house, so then and ruled by
It's North node is in Scorpio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to help me out? North node in 4th house ruled by Scorpio. Anyone?
And then South in 10th.
South and 10th. Okay. Let me look something up really quickly.
Yeah, I feel like the 4th house is like so vague. And
yeah, I know, because like what I don't understand about the 4th house is that it's like it's Cancerian, right? So it rules like the home and family. So yeah, like wounds around, North node, yeah. So you have to go towards family, but it's like Scorpio, so Scorpio is like not super family vibes.
Yeah.
Which is like what's confusing for me. But then like you came in this life with career, with like lots of career working, and yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna pass on this one.
Okay.
I have to get back. Yes, Miss North Node, South Node's book reader?
Yes, I have the book. So at the beginning of each chapter, it says, it has just like a little brief overview of attributes to develop and tendencies to leave behind. So if you want to hear that, I can read it.
Let's do it. I don't claim to know everything. I'm just a baby.
Oh no, we're all learning. Like,
yeah.
that's what it's about. But yeah, so it says for the North Node in the 4th house, work in these areas can help uncover hidden gifts and talents. So it says noticing and validating feelings, empathy, nurturing and supporting others, building one's own foundation and security, honest disclosure of feelings and insecurities, humility, accepting others' fluctuating moods without judgment, and staying centered in one's own feelings. And then tendencies to leave behind, it says needing to control everything, compulsion to take charge without fully understanding the situation. Do you feel comfortable if I read this? Okay.
Absolutely.
I know the North and South node is just so personal, so yeah.
No.
Okay. Ignoring the process, being too focused on the goal, feeling completely responsible for everything, hiding feelings and fears in intimate relationships. So yeah, I don't know if that like resonates with you, but that's what the book says. So
Yeah, that very much resonates. It's very interesting.
Can I say something about it? Like, because it's funny because I made these North Node cards.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, based on everything I researched on the notes, including Jan Spieler's book and every other thing that's out there on the notes. I've been, part of the study of the evolutionary astrology. And then also the north and south node rulers are also important to look at. So if your north node is in Scorpio, you have to look at Pluto as well, because that's the ruler of your north node. So what's Pluto doing in that energy there? But in essence, it's also like, it's not necessarily releasing, it's more like it's like integrating it into the experience so it can be pushed towards what you should be embracing. So in the Scorpio, it's spirituality, joint ventures, self-discipline, positive transformation, finding power in emotion, accepting support, and awareness of others' emotions. Those are like the basic bullet points that, me, Virgo, getting 10 books into a little card. But and the fourth house, it speaks of course about the family, the roots, also the roots. So if the 10th house is who I become in the world, as what I do in the world for others, the fourth house brings you who are you within your closest environment. So what are your roots like, or where your roots come from? So maybe even look at like family, like what's your family tree like? What are your roots bringing to you and your experience in this lifetime? And what's the type of like maybe home environment you're going to create for yourself, and put more energy in there instead of like just being out in the world doing a million things, which is funny because it's the opposite of me. I have my North Node in the 10th house, full of planets there. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm supposed maybe to what I'm living in the world is important for the world. My service to the world is in Virgo, right? I need to be doing things out in the world. Whereas you might be more like, what can I do in my small world that I'm going to leave something like within my roots? Like what's it like to be home and be a homemaker? A homemaker. And and Scorpio is also, it's not just all the dark themes. Scorpio is also it's what attaches us and merges. Scorpio tends to merge. It's when the energies need to merge. And it's also the transformation, is the caterpillar to the butterfly. So energy. So, and the shared and joint ventures. So what in the home can you be sharing with someone, that's going to give you an experience of your life that's going to be fulfilling for your souls in this lifetime? Because maybe in other lifetimes you're always out there in the workforce, just working and doing for all the planet. And then maybe Michaela this lifetime says, what's an experience for my soul of being in a simple, homey environment that it's nurturing, but at the same time has some depth, of experience. And that's how we bring, the most fulfilling part of our journey. That's why we feel pulled to like that energy of the North or South Node. We really feel pulled to the energy of the North Node because it gives us a lot of fulfillment. You just kind of feel fulfilled when you're in that, you're kind of living that. You're like, why do I like this so much? So
yeah,
that's my take on that, because I'm a nerd of this evolutionary astrology stuff. But again, it's just one perspective of astrology. So, it's not absolute truth. It's just a perspective. So yeah,
very much resonates. Like that's really incredible. I like, I spend a lot of time like really feeling and thinking and cultivating like my home space and my like in direct connections. And so
and it can play out in many forms. It could be just the nurturing aspect, but it could also be like, oh, I love working from home. Well, not necessarily working from home, but maybe cultivating your own sense of self nurturance as well. That be that, or like being at home, or even maybe not working from home per se. That would be more of a sixth house thing, but even that, you said Scorpio, anything that has to do with also how you maybe merging with whatever's in your home, the merger of energies and the acceptance of support and joint, like having a partner maybe to, you know, again, we would have to look at your whole chart to see what's going on there. But
yeah,
yeah,
that's ridiculously accurate. Like, so thanks. Yeah,
Oh,
I'll send it to you.
yeah, I love that.
Little cards.
thank you guys. Thanks. I knew, Tatiana, you'd have my back if I needed anything. Yeah, it's so much to learn, like, because they're also like opposites. So when you think you've learned, like, okay, I think I know what the south north node of the 10th and 4th house, and then you're like, oh no, now it's like reversed. And so sometimes it can be a lot, but yeah, that's kind of all I have for you guys with my notes and everything. And I did want to say a few things. So first, I just wanted to say thank you for asking me to come on. It's quite a privilege and good for me to step outside of my comfort zone, because I have this pressure on myself that I need to know like everything and just be like Adam, you know, and just like have the craziest things to say. So it's nice to just be like, yeah, you know what, I'm just gonna do this thing, and I hope you guys enjoy. And so thank you for receiving me and for sending me the donations. It's really encouraging for me to keep following my dreams and doing that North Node and the 12th house thing. And yeah, and so I am in the midst of building a really potent program with me if you want to dive really deep into shadow work and developing your psychic abilities. And I talk about witchy things and how to, if you wanted crystal ball gaze or spell casting, and I teach a whole month on how to read tarot. And I'm going to be doing a couple months on astrology, and there's a whole lot there, lots of shadow work and healing rituals, and it's gonna be amazing. And it's gonna be 6 months long, and so I'm gonna be offering that. If you know anyone who would like to join, or if you'd like to join, you can send me a message. And then on Facebook, I'm Luna Veronica Mystic, if you want to see my astrology posts and moon stuff and crazy photo shoots and dance stuff and all the things. And then my website is lunaveronica.com if you want to see my offerings there. And yeah, that's the things. And just thank you guys so much. And if you want to be on my newsletter as well, you can drop me your email anywhere. I don't know where, but you can drop me it. And I'm just really excited to have an astrology community in Victoria, even if we have like this craziness going on. I really want to be involved in something more regular. And there's a thumbs up. Wow, I don't know how you did that, but that's that's a good thumbs up. And
it's on the bottom bar on the right. It's a new feature, brand new. I just saw it just now. Reactions.
Oh, reaction. Okay, they're gonna.
You can do that. Well, I guess it's an ongoing thing.
Yeah.